Hi, good afternoon. This is Kent, and I'm sitting here with Megan Costello.
Hi guys.
Megan taught SRA, oops, let me switch here, SRA 111 this past spring. Well, she's been teaching it for a little while now. And because she has taught the course a few semesters now, she came up with an alternative to the PerSec Lab. And I've got both versions up, and so during the screencast, we'll be kind of switching between the two persecs here, but we'll try and orient you the best possible, at the best possible times to make sure you know what you're looking at. This one happens to be from Ed's section. Ed was Ed is the author for 111, and so we'll be using this as sort of a comparison. This isn't this one's better than another. It's just a different approach, and we wanted to share it because ultimately the goal might be to see if we can streamline it, and if there is one that people prefer, then maybe we can use that for all of the sections. If we want to, or if we, if there's still interest, we can still definitely keep and maintain both versions. But anyway, so maybe what I'll do is I'll kind of turn it over to Megan, and I'll do some driving here on the screen, and just kind of have her go through and explain it. Maybe we can just kind of go through the different aspects of it. I think everyone who's going to be watching this video is already going to know the current PerSec, so we don't have to go into detail about what we've got here, but obviously we will see some of the differences as we compare both versions. So maybe we'll start off with the instructions, and you can kind of talk through that. I'm going to open up Ed's here for right now, and we'll just kind of flip back and forth between the two versions. So this is Ed's, and then this is the one that we created for Megan's section. And Megan, maybe you want to just kind of start off and talk about what are some of the differences and
Sure.
similarities.
So in the original PerSec Lab that was created by Ed Glantz, which is awesome to begin with, this is something that I noticed was really internal to the class. So if there was a student who was learning about personal computer security, this was something where they were filling out a lot of different forms and things for the PerSec Lab, but it was ultimately coming to me as the instructor with an evaluation of their own system and their hardware and their networks and things like that, presented to me in a form through Angel, and ultimately that would be graded accordingly, based on their knowledge of their computer system. But as I went through through the first time of using this PerSec Lab, I really wanted to, I guess, expand this in a way where we could get the students talking to one another. In the PerSec Lab, originally, like I said, they're kind of going through and they're filling in things in a personal way, they're sending things to me, but in the PerSec Lab that I kind of altered, from the original thing, it was with the idea that now these students could take this information that they're entering and kind of discussing this with other students in the class so they could get a little bit, so they could get used to speaking to more than just their team, or just working by themselves and things like that, getting them more involved. So the way that I structured the PerSec Lab for my section last semester, which was the fall of actually, no, it was spring. 2015. Losing track of time here. But anyway, the way that I structured it was more of a way of personal reflection on their own configurations for their computers, and then actually going forward with that information of like, oh, hey, this is what I know, this is what I'm doing, actually sharing some more information with the class and having the classmates who come from all different levels of experience, because I've had people who have no experience whatsoever with a computer, and I've had people who are experts, like just black belts and whatever they do. And so it's nice to have them communicate with one another to ultimately learn a little bit more about PerSec Lab, about their personal security, and likewise to have those people who are really knowledgeable in that field be able to feel like they're teaching and sharing and kind of getting a lot of information out there at the onset of learning personal security. So that said, this is kind of how mine is structured. It's a little bit different. It's a little less internal. It's a little more class-oriented, I guess, than the original PerSec Lab. So the way that I structured the PerSec Lab, just to kind of give it a go, was through a Google form. I figured this was something that would be the quickest way to kind of get it out there, and to like gather a lot of information in a way that would be really insightful to the students and also easy for us to kind of put together on the fly. When we created this was kind of, right before we started up the spring semester, and so these are changes that have been made. We want to go ahead, or at least I do, and turn this into something a little bit more formal, like through Qualtrics and things like that. But for right now, it's in a Google form. And basically what the first part of the PerSec Lab is, I actually made a video that talks a little bit about personal security and different things that you may not have realized you may lose in your own, if you're not careful, that you could possibly hurt yourself with personal security if you don't safeguard the things that you have, different hardware, different software, basically mimicking a lot of what was said in Ed's original PerSec Lab. So Kent's kind of scrolling through here to talk about, do you have a disaster recovery plan? Do you have a lot to lose? Stuff like that, kind of reminding them about different things that go along with personal security. So we're kind of scrolling through here. This particular video was made through a tool called Powtoon, which is, it's a freemium service. So what you can do is you can sign up for a free account, but there are also ways for you to get, educational discounts and things like that for this. With me, I actually have an educational account on Powtoon where you can build different, it goes beyond, I guess, a PowerPoint, and it's a little bit less involved in making a video, but it kind of makes these animated presentations for the students to view in, however long of a chunk you want to make them. So for this particular video, I wanted to make it flashy and exciting, and so that's why the PerSec Lab has that particular thing. So
I'll just kind of continue on here.
Yep.
And I should say again that, or we should mention again that this this Google form sort of takes the place of the template input.
Right.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Correct. So originally what students would do is they would fill in this template that Kent's going to bring back up. Okay. They used to fill in this template here to kind of evaluate their different system hardware and things like that. Systems and hardware and networks and all these different things. And then once they had a running list of all these different things, they would go into Angel and actually submit within, there's like a form that they had to send in different information and submit this to me. So this particular questionnaire replaces that and kind of evaluates them from a different standpoint. So now after they've gone through the video and they've verified that they've watched it, because of course I'm an attorney, I always like people to read the terms and conditions.
Yes, I skipped through the little checkbox there, but I did click it.
The little checkbox there to verify that they watched it. Now we're moving on to the second part of the PerSec Lab, which is the self-evaluation questionnaire.
Oh, can I interrupt you?
Yeah, sure.
I apologize. If I remember right, the PerSec Lab, the original one that Ed had designed, was optionally. Right. It was optional with a partner. Is that correct?
Yes.
That you could do it by yourself, but you could also work on it with a partner to do it. Now, yours, can you talk a little bit about that before we move on? Was this form designed for individuals to fill out, and then? Yeah.
So the way that I designed this was an individual self-evaluation questionnaire, and they're required to watch the video. They're required to answer the questions with their own personal computing device or system or whatever they have in mind. With that said, once they're finished taking this on their own and they're kind of thinking about different things in personal security, now it's time for them to talk to the other students in the class.
That's the group kind of aspect.
And that's where the group rolls in.
Gotcha.
So people can kind of collaborate in that way, in a different way.
Yes.
So,
no, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, back to this. Again, I apologize for interrupting.
Right. Yeah, no problem. So now we're at part 2, which is the self-evaluation questionnaire. Like I said, it's all about, in my PerSec Lab, about reflection and then discussing. Mm-hmm. And so with the self-evaluation questionnaire, what I did was I took a lot of what Ed had, almost, exactly, many of the things that he was testing the students on, and then turning this into something where I'm asking them about specific things in their computing, daily computing, every single day. the different devices that they use to complete their coursework. So a lot of students said, either a laptop or a tablet. I've noticed tablets. I was actually kind of surprised by how many tablets were in the class. And then, whatever they use most frequently, that's going to be their primary device. So then as you click through and you decide what your primary device is, so let's say they have a laptop. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter here. You talk about, if you're thinking about your primary device and you're like, okay, it's standard with some modifications, and then on different scales, they could talk about, if it was damaged, lost, or stolen, how confident would you be for restoring the device to its original state? So kind of just making them aware of some of the different things that maybe they didn't even think about. For example, in this question 5, talking about I don't allow anyone to eat, drink, or smoke around my primary device. Maybe people don't think about that, you know what I mean? So it's just a lot of things to kind of keep them aware and keep them thinking about what they do every day, so they can reflect on that in the discussion questions. So physical security, we're kind of
I'll just
breezing through.
get through this.
So then we move on to different operating systems and applications and talking about restoring them and how do you store a lot of your data? Are you redundant with your storage of data and things like that?
Oops, I skipped something. Here we go.
And a lot of these are required of the students. If you notice, there are red asterisks on the side of a lot of these questions, just to make sure that as they're going through, they're not just breezing through like we're doing right now,
like I am.
but really reflecting on it and making sure that they're thinking about it, even for a couple seconds.
Yeah. I don't know, because I'm a geek, but I like this process. I mean, I like going through and answering the questions. I mean, it's pretty easy to do. It's not like this really painful process either. So.
Right, and I recognize that in SRA 111 there are students from all levels of computing.
Yes, that's a very good
We have
point.
Students who are not even in the College of IST. We have students who have maybe not even touched a computer in years, because we have adult learners and different people who may not be comfortable on a computer. Whereas, like I said before, we also have the black belts who are very experienced in that. It's kind of old hat, to be able to do different things like that. So I really wanted to keep that in mind and make it an even playing field for people, so that way they can go through, they can understand exactly what they need to do, and attack it that way. So.
Sorry, I skipped ahead here while we were talking.
Yeah.
That's
so,
okay.
Again, we're just kind of going through what that original form that we were looking at before from Ed's was going through. We're talking about online security, we're talking about physical security, we're talking about all different types of things that have to go along with personal security, essentially. Just asked in a different way and having the students really think about it in certain ways. So, like online security there, anti-spyware, antivirus.
It's just, a lot of it's in just a different format here. So again, I'm just kind of ripping through these. But we can, again, make this public, as well as, actually, what we'll probably do is make a, like you said, a Qualtrics version that we can share out with all of the instructors. And then, if they want to use it, then they can make a copy of it to use in their own classes.
Yeah, and I think Qualtrics would be... Oh, you missed one. See, that's what happens when you breeze through. You have to go back up and check it.
Don't let the instructor see.
All right, so then when you get to the end, like I said, it's not just a reflection on what your personal computing scheme is. Now it's time for you to go public and talk to the other people in the class about, the different strategies that you use to secure your primary device and different things like that. So that also kind of mimics what Ed was looking for in his original PerSec Lab, because, they were telling me in their Dropboxes and things like that exactly what they're doing. And that was kind of one of the things that really inspired me to kind of bring this out to a discussion board rather than something that was internal to me. Because while it was great to hear about all the different tools and the resources that these students used, I felt it would be more helpful to have the students suggest to other students, well, I use this for my antivirus. I use this, I store my files on a million different things and different drives and different cloud storage and stuff like that. And I just kind of felt that would be a great way to do it. And actually, the turnout was fantastic. Kent has it pulled up right now with the discussion board from this past semester. And all of the students are required to answer all of the questions. And likewise, one of the requirements is that they respond to another student's questions. And everybody did that. It which was great. But the cool thing to see was that once they had those points in mind, and once they finished things in full sentences, because I do require full sentences, I'm very specific about that. I've noticed that some of the students would actually go above and beyond in this message board and see what the other students were concerned about. I mean, if these people were very skilled in personal security, they would move forward and just start writing these great long responses about, well, maybe it doesn't work for you this way because of this, but this is what I use. And so there's just so much just discussion going on here. And so I just felt that it was really, really helpful, I think, to everybody involved. And actually, after the discussion went on, there were a few students who not only continued to write on our class message boards beyond the PerSec Lab, like they noticed, I guess, what the level of computing and things were in the class, and they wanted to make note of some of the different flaws and different things to look out for online, where they would go onto our regular message board and just post that, which was kind of cool. And then there was actually another group who came to me at the end, well, I guess when we were picking different topics to talk about in our final presentation, that they were like, we really like the PerSec Lab, we wanted to expand upon it, we noticed that there were a few people who may be a little bit confused on some of the things, and beyond what we've told them on the message board, we'd really like to expand this into something that we could teach everyone about.
So it really sounds like they took their learning to a whole new level, and we're looking out for not just their own learning, but the community.
Right. And it was really
awesome.
Fascinating to see. I really thought that they did a great job with this, and the turnout ended up being overwhelmingly positive. So, very good.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, let's see, what are some other things here? We have an intro video and self-evaluation.
So
this
is
the link to the actual Google Doc. I'm going to close that.
And the whole reason why I embedded the video in the evaluation to begin with was just to make sure that I had a record that they watched it.
Yes.
And that it was in one place where they could just click it and go through. And the only other thing that they would have to access would be the bulletin board to speak to each other. Additionally, I know that Ed in his original PerSec Lab had hardware and software evaluations very specifically with what the different students had on each of their computers. And so I left that as an optional thing that was ungraded. But I know there were a few people who were interested in having that backup plan and really listing the different things that they had. So I allowed them, on their own time to go in and kind of fill things out if they wanted to.
No, that's great.
Which is, kind of helpful.
Yep. And of course, this is all very familiar.
Yep.
Get rid of that. Oh my goodness. Cancel. And yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So basically, if they felt like they wanted to do that, they certainly could. And I didn't want to take that opportunity from them. But as a 100 level course with people from all varying levels of computing, I just wanted to make it as easy, I guess, for everyone to get through and easy for them and accessible for them to talk to one another. That's why, I focused it that way.
And then, of course, you've repurposed the appendix here as well.
Sure. I'd like to give different terminology and stuff like that
fantastic.
From the original PerSec. So overall, it was interesting to use. It was fun to do. So I hope that helps.
if I had to ask you about like one big gotcha, for another faculty member to kind of keep an eye out for if they choose to run with this great exercise, what would you say?
Sure. Well, the only thing that I had an issue with, and I wouldn't even really consider it a major issue because it seemed like the students who wrote to me about it, I went through on my list on the Google Doc, and sure enough, I guess they just didn't do the assignment or they didn't click through the different things. Google Docs does give you a running list of who contributed to different things, and also Angel gives a running list of who contributed to different things. And so keeping track of who's contributed is really something that you need to watch out for, and just make sure you keep an eye out on the list of who's contributing, who's not. And it's also a good idea if you're teaching the course to wait to open up the Google form until like it's right about time for them to answer those questions for the PerSec Lab. So that way you don't have people just, I guess, blazing through in the beginning and not really taking advantage of the discussion forum like they should be. Because I did have two students who just on the first week go, oh, PerSec Lab, I'm just going to do it. And there was no ability for them to really communicate with the other students at that point. And so it just kind of, with the flow of the rest of the class, it really made sense to wait until everybody was available to do that.
So again, they're not you want to give them time to go through and think about everything in the PerSec Lab form without necessarily putting in all their answers to it. Is that correct? So that they have time to discuss. Could you talk about again the scheduling of what overlaps when?
Sure. Yeah.
And maybe I'm missing that part there.
Sure. So when we get into the personal security section of SRA 111, the PerSec Lab is usually their first introduction to what personal security is. So, for example, we're just finishing off a certain section, and then it's like, okay, now it's time to try the PerSec Lab to kind of get a feel for what personal security is, because we're going to be discussing this in the sections ahead, but it's like 2 weeks that are happening after the PerSec Lab happens. And so there are some students who are coming in at the very, very, very beginning of class when, you know, they haven't gone through a lot of the other steps in the course, and, you know, they see the form and they're like, oh, okay, a form, I'm going to go through it. But at the same time, it's not really as enriching if they have the actual reading assignments and they're able to
I apologize. I see what you're saying now. Yes, right. So you really want to make sure that the timing of it is appropriate.
Right,
so
right. The timing is very appropriate.
They're keeping, and that's fine because pretty much all the World Campus courses I've seen are designed off of a paced perspective. Of course, you know, we give exceptions to certain folks, extenuating circumstances, but the whole idea is that everybody is moving along together.
Sure.
and you are saying that at least in this particular case, that does make a little bit more of a difference.
Right, right.
For them to be able to really interact. In
this particular case, it's important to have them interact because, like I said, we have people from all different levels of computing. And so it's nice for them to go through the evaluation, and while it's fresh in their minds, be able to actually discuss with their classmates what's going on and ask the questions that they need to ask without necessarily, you know, doing this at the very beginning of the class. Like right when they have a lot of information from the earlier notes in the class, and now they can think about it a little bit.
Gotcha.
So.
Just for the future, also when doing this again, we can do things like keep the link here, but actually kind of lock it down so they can't click on it until. But that way, in the back end, the actual survey will be open the entire time.
Right.
It's just students wouldn't have access to it. It's just through the CMS.
And the thing is also the instructions for the assignment and even the questions for the PerSec Lab were available for them to view, so they kind of had an idea of what to look out for once they got to the PerSec Lab. But as far as being able to contribute to the form, just to make sure everybody was paced, we kind of restricted that until it was time, you know, like a week before, or, you know, I forget when we actually opened it up, but it was very close to when the PerSec Lab was starting up and they needed to be able to contribute. So,
great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess I would say to anybody watching, if you've got questions, please email either myself and or Megan. And in the future, I'd like to do this with more instructors. To be honest, this is the first time I've kind of, ever thought about, hey, let's just actually look at your course and sit down and show me and talk through this. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching.
All right, thanks, guys.